Hello, perhaps this is you. You're saying, I'm currently navigating a challenging period in my life, yet I'm also experiencing joy and fulfillment. You might also be saying, I embrace and find contentment in my introverted nature. However, I remain perplexed by my social adjustment challenges or difficulties with socializing with people. The contradictions with how you feel, how you navigate the world, and the expectations can actually be something that you might be struggling with. But the truth is, we all have to choose what challenges we face, what challenges we address. And when you want to show up in the moment and show up as your truest self, you want to be somebody who feels like people can relate with you, can recognize themselves in you, and that means you want to show up authentically. However, there is a dilemma because of some of these challenges that I've talked about. So today, that is what we want to address. We want to talk about the dilemma that comes with authenticity. Welcome to Quietly Confident Introvert Podcast, the podcast that empowers introverted women in business and leadership to develop quiet confidence, harness their introvert strengths, and achieve their big, audacious ambitions. We want to talk today really about a topic that is very close to my heart. And I know that for a lot of introverts as well, because in a world where we're constantly being challenged to speak up more, to show up more, and to show up as our truest self, it can be difficult. So today we want to talk about the authenticity dilemma and how to handle it as an introvert. So the truth about it is, whether we like it or not, authenticity is something that, even though it's a buzzword and we hear it a lot, and sometimes you can be, oh, forget about that word. I don't think I'm interested. It's a word that is important, that can shape our relationships and help us to build trust, help us to build credibility. It can also be a word that can impact one's mental health, because when you are not being your real self and you're walking about, in life we hear that a lot of people walk around with a mask on and are not showing what they want to show to the world, or don't feel empowered to show what they really want to show to the world. The implications of that are that there will be limits to the things that you can do in life, or the places that you can feel that you can have a voice in life. So, and just because in social media you get people saying, oh, this is the real me, you are being bombarded, you start to think, yeah, but is it really the real you? Then you get on the other side where people would also share their struggles, but share it in a way that puts them still in a good light. So I'll give you an example. Recently, I stumbled on a story, and this is because there is currently a video, or is it a film, running on Netflix called Apple Cider Vinegar, and it's really about an Australian influencer who, for many years, lied about having cancer and made a lot of money as a result. Lied about having cancer and then being cured from the cancer through healthy living. Now, that lie ran for many, many years. She was being her true self in the eyes of many people. Whereas, in all honesty, what she was doing was deceiving a lot of people. What she was doing was making money from a lot of people's, I don't know, I guess, refusal to actually check their facts, or wanting the quickest or more fashionable way of achieving something. And nobody bothered to check until two journalists came along and did that digging. And today she has owned up to lying, and lying to people's faces. And we know that this is happening across the world with leaders coming up with all sorts of lies, with people around coming up with all sorts of lies, showing themselves on social media in a light that will be attractive to people. And is that really authenticity? And you might be sitting there, like I introduced the today's show and talked about the fact that you will have challenges. You feel, I want to show up as my true self. However, I want to be my introverted self and find that balance and not show up at all, really. So those are some of the things. So for me, when I turned 30, I started to work on keeping things real. I felt like the migraines I was having going to work every day was a reflection of the fact that I was trying to be who I was not. And I actually can admit, and I say that a lot, that I self-loathed when I was my younger years. I just loathed myself. I just felt something's not right with you underneath the surface. You know, why is it that you want to move away from people? You want to have quiet time. I've told the story before of a situation where I came out of lecture during my university days. I was walking very fast to my room and I heard someone calling my name, Patience, Patience, where are you going? And they stopped me and said, every time I see you after class, you put your head down, you're in a hurry going to your room. What is it that is in your room? And initially, I always I said, well, you're not in my room for starters, which is brilliant. But then as I thought about it, my room was calling me because I needed to get away from people. And at that moment, from that moment, I thought, is this odd? Is this weird? Doesn't everybody want to get away and go to their room and just have some quiet after a very intense day? I realized that no, not everybody does that. So basically, I spent years actually secretly loathing myself. So to come into my 30s, I had to make a decision. I wasn't going to continue to wake up every morning hating the job I was doing, struggling with the strengths that I wasn't finding. And now I know a lot more about myself. But at the time I didn't know. And the journey to get to know was is what has led me here. And it's a brilliant one. And basically, I had to go on this journey of self discovery, what we also call self empowerment, and start to unpeel the layers and develop the courage to be real. I said to myself, I've got to be real. And the thing is, as time went on, usually, even as a young child as well, I hated looking in the mirror because I didn't like the person that was looking back at me. But as time has gone on, I've got the courage to look in the mirror, to look at my real self. Who am I? Who is she with all the lumps and bumps or whatever there is there? And to the point where now, when I look in the mirror, I just don't only see my image, myself. I kind of see my soul. I kind of see my thoughts. I kind of see my acceptance of my flaws. And it's taking years of that self awareness and self acceptance work to the point where last year, I then did a test, an Institute of Leadership and Management leadership assessment, and my top score came out as authenticity as a leadership strength. And I thought, ooh, that's interesting because since I have focused on this work, it has led to something beautiful for me. And that's what I want to share with you today. I want to share with you about both the dilemma and how you handle it and the benefits of being authentic. So I'm not trying to put myself on a pedestal by sharing this story, but I know that the lessons that I have learned over the years, and also people see me on all social media platforms. Like now, you are listening to my podcast, and you will also watch it on YouTube, and you see me on stage all across the world. And you see me standing up in meetings. Recently, I went to London. I was just new for the first time. I was a participant sitting in the crowd and I was called up on stage. I'm not trying to chase that, but authenticity and being your true self can lead to so many opportunities and open doors. And it's to help you find the courage to be to be authentic, not to treat it as a buzzword. That's what we're going to do today. So the first thing I want to share about this is that authenticity starts with accepting vulnerability. It comes with the territory. Yeah, it just comes with the territory. And when we talk about vulnerability, what are we really talking about? You see, people show up on social media and you see highlight reels, you see the quality of life that people are living and things like that. And you feel like, I don't think I measure up. My life is actually very boring. Well, everybody seems to be having their best life, sharing intimate thoughts about themselves. And you start thinking, can I really be this open about myself? You start asking yourself those questions. Well, here's the thing: vulnerability does not start by social media, because when you start to use social media as a yardstick for vulnerability, it actually gets quite fake in a sense. Like turning on the camera when you want to shed tears and crying on camera. Yes, if it's caught in the moment, it's different. But if you stage the camera and put it in a nice place and sit down and you're crying, is that really vulnerability? That's the question to ask yourself. And I think that's the question social media has to answer. But because authenticity matters in our relationships, matters in all sorts of ways, it's important that, when you're showing vulnerability, you know that there is a big chance that you are risking people judging you. You are risking um, rejection. You're also risking people thinking, oh, that's too much, or you're not sharing enough of yourself. Where you decide to only share a little bit. What I think vulnerability truly means is that you are embracing your quirkiness and your flaws. You are embracing the feelings that come true when you are trying to talk about something that you're going through, and you're allowing yourself to express those feelings in a human way. And also, I guess, you're expressing your struggles and how you're facing those struggles, but you're also expressing your brilliance. Vulnerability is not just about talking about the challenges, but it's about talking about your brilliance in a way that is not um alienating other people from feeling like they could attain to what you're attaining to, what you have attained. And vulnerability is about balancing the struggle between wanting to be accepted by others whilst also facing your doubt and your certainty about your brilliance, but feeling okay with sharing where you are, what you have to offer, what you're bringing to the world. Just feeling okay to share that imperfect, yet in your view, perfect as it is for where you are on your journey, being willing to share that with others. And it's also important to recognize that the people around you are actually a mirror, and you can see yourself through their eyes, and you can also see yourself through the way that they treat you. And if you are in the wrong environment, you might feel the need to be less authentic. You might feel the need to be less vulnerable. So you have to know what environment you are showing up with vulnerability. And but the real issue is that we can't control the environments we find ourselves. Take, for example, at work. So if you're a leader who really wants to, like I said, vulnerability means being willing to accept your quirkiness, your flaws, being willing to accept where you are in terms of the gaps in your growth, in terms of the places where you don't have as much brilliance, and at the same time expressing your brilliance without trying to put other people down. If the environment is not conducive, if the environment is not something you can create and control, what do you do? So that brings me to the second lesson that I really learned, which is you manage vulnerability and stay authentic through courageous self leadership and courageous leadership of others as well. So, what do I mean by that? So, vulnerability obviously is on a spectrum, and so we talk about authenticity. Vulnerability is on, you have different levels of it. And there are moments where, when you decide to be your true self, it can be empowering, it can be liberating, and it can even transform other people. But then there are moments where, when you decide to be your authentic true self and you show vulnerability, it can alienate people, be hurtful, and damaging even to you. So, what is the key thing, therefore, in terms of being somebody who is courageously leading their lives and courageously seeking to be a leader amongst other people? You need to find the balance between your true self and being mindful of then the impact that you create or that you have on others. And it's important that you recognize that when you're being vulnerable, you are taking some risks there. However, you have to know when to take those risks and when to play it safe. And it's all about learning, and it's all about understanding how you can embrace authenticity in the moment, in the environment that you find yourself. If you're lucky to be the one in charge who can create the environment, fair enough. But if you're not, then dealing with the environment that you find yourself and applying the right leadership in that environment can help you a lot. So when you want to embrace the discomfort of authenticity as an introvert, for example, because as an introvert, there are times that you want to sit at a corner and be quiet, and that's because you are processing, you're taking things in, but you might look to other people like you are disengaged and you are too quiet, you are passive, so to speak. You have to be willing to courageously help people to walk that journey of knowing what impact you bring. So for you, you have to embrace the fear and dislike of being in the spotlight. So you have to find ways to embrace that fear and dislike. Most introverts dislike the spotlight. So you have to know when that spotlight is important to be in and for what benefit it will bring. Then you have to embrace the fear of being disliked and misjudged. So if you're going to be your true self, not everybody will like you. And you might be thinking in your head, when you step up to maybe try. Sometimes I step up and I try to be more expressive, more assertive, and put myself out there. And it doesn't always feel natural. And I'll sometimes be thinking in my head, and you might be thinking this as well. If only people knew how boring I am, would they really like me? Would they really care? Especially when I come off stage and people go, wow, that was a great message. That was this, that was that. And I'll be thinking, oh, if only people knew who I am in terms of how boring my life can be, it's not that exciting. Nothing really great happening per se. Will they still accept me? Here's the thing, those that will, and people see through the mask, or people see through the pretense. And you just have to be willing to recognize that no matter how good you are, though, not everybody will like you. Human beings have varying tastes. And you have to make peace with the fact that not everybody will like you. And the truth, and here's the thing, as a person of faith, there was, when I was younger, there was a scripture I read that really hit home. And it said that if everybody likes you, and it can mean that you are compromising somewhere, somehow. I can't remember where it is now, but it means, it says, let your yes be yes, and yet let your no be no as well. So, and that's important when it comes to authenticity, and it comes to the fact that, okay, no, I don't do this, and I know that people might think that that means that I'm antisocial. That's fine. I can't take it anymore, I need to go away. And you're being your true self, but not, some people will have a judgment about that. They'll have a judgment about what you're saying, what you're doing. So in the midst of showing all that courage, in the midst of being vulnerable, the other thing that I have learned is that you've got to do all this with wisdom. Another scripture says, in all you're getting, when you're getting money, getting everything, get wisdom as well. And wisdom basically means that you are checking when to be authentic, when to just step back and not have to show up, and when to really, and how you show it here, by that I mean showing humility. So humility for me means you are thinking less of yourself. Basically, in being vulnerable, it's not that you think, oh, I have to think less of myself, but you'll be thinking about how others will be impacted from the message, from what you're sharing. And that allows you to show the real depth of the maybe impact of something that has happened to you. Because you want people to, in a world where there's a lot of fake things happening, you want people to see the real stuff, the real things. You want people to understand also, especially if they are going through that struggle themselves. It helps them to know that they are not weird, they're not odd, and it can happen to even the best of us who are out there putting ourselves out there. In that way, combining wisdom and humility work very well, because you're saying it is wise to show people the real extent of this, because I can make a difference in their lives and touch lives. So that's one way of looking at it. You need to apply wisdom in understanding when sharing becomes oversharing. Now, at some point, I'm going to talk about some types of challenges that people have that causes oversharing. Some types of challenges that people have that causes emotional sensitivity, that causes people to withdraw and not show their true self or show up. I'm going to talk about that at some point, and some stage as we go along with the different episodes. At some point, I'm going to bring that up. However, you have to know when to balance out the sharing and when oversharing, when you are oversharing, really. And as a leader who wants to apply wisdom in what you do, balancing vulnerability, courage, and humility to stay authentic without looking like we are trying to manipulate people is not really easy. And sometimes you might feel that in being vulnerable, in trying to stay authentic, you're looking weak. So, what you want to do is to ask yourself questions and to have strategies in place for how you present yourself. So, there are two ways of looking at it. Some people come on and go, "Oh, I'm being spontaneous. I put on the camera and I do all this stuff and I'm being authentic." That's one way to look at it. The other way to look at it is that you can be strategic in your approach. In marketing, when brands are trying to present themselves to relate to people and to draw in the people they're trying to serve, there's an element of them trying to show how the real brand is and what the real brand is not. Good advertising captures that in a nice way, but it doesn't happen by accident. Somebody sits down, maps it out, draws it out. So if for yourself you want to show up on social media, you want to show up on everywhere, that, for example, with the podcast, I've had to plan this conversation out. I didn't just switch on the camera and it's coming on. I can do that and I can flow sometimes, but I have an intention here, which is how I want to come across and the messages and the key points that I want to make. That requires planning. And so that when I'm talking about being authentic in whatever I'm doing, it doesn't mean that I don't plan the way that I present myself. So that's something to remember. So if you're planning, you can ask yourself some key questions like, who am I trying to reach with this and why? What is my intention for sharing this story and how will it impact and influence others? On social media, we talk about influencers and all that stuff. And I've already told you from the beginning of this show about an influencer who lied about having cancer. If she had come on board and said, I am using these things and I know that they are beneficial, do you have to go to the point of lying about cancer to be that successful? That's the question. And why is it that she had to do that? Is it not because of the importance that society attaches to things? So you have to ask yourself, what is my intention for sharing this story and how will it impact and influence? Then how will it benefit me and boost my ego and confidence? Because there is a fine line between ego and confidence. And sometimes some of us cross it. Like I would say that this influencer lady who lied for many years, her ego did not allow her to kind of come out and say things. And the more she told that lie, the more she built confidence. And the more people followed her, the more her confidence grew. So you want to ask yourself, how is it benefiting me and boosting my ego and confidence? And is it bad ego or is it positive ego? Because we have to love ourselves, we have to appreciate and celebrate ourselves. And sometimes it's difficult if you don't have some external validation. Yes, I know people say don't seek external validation. We all need it. Imagine if your children never hugged you and they never said I love you and they just expected you to feel it in their in the atmosphere, then truly you need that external, you need that validation. You need them to say, Mom, I love you. I like my children telling me they love me. I like my children when I stretch my hands, they're running in, even now that they're in their 20s, to give me a big hug. That's external validation. So if you think about it that way, we all want it when we show up on social media and show up. There's no need pretending that, oh, I don't care. People say that I don't care if people like me. I don't care if people like me. I can't say that. I do care that people like me. But I used to care more than I do now, because it's not for me to be liked that I go out there. Liking me can equate to a nice back balance and profit, but ultimately, it's also that I have a message that sometimes might not be likable, but it's worth delivering. And it's for me, that's how you live purposefully, to bring yourself to a place of balancing your desire for authenticity with knowing when and how to be vulnerable and also to apply humility to it. So, what are some of the benefits that I have found over the years in terms of being somebody who has gone along with working on on authenticity to the point where I feel that I love my motto is what you see is what you get. I really want that. And sometimes people are like, oh, you didn't just admit to that, and I'm like, well, what's the point pretending on it? But sometimes it's like, oh, patience, know when to be wise, know when to keep quiet. So there is that balance. And I too am still learning it. What about what are some of the surprising benefits that I have found, even for me and some of my clients that have encouraged to go out there and be their true selves? So, one of them is self trust, which leads to quiet confidence. If you trust yourself, when you show up in places where you are put on the spot, you will just say, I'm going to be myself. And you trust yourself because you work on yourself as well. You work on the areas that you know are not right, and you are constantly developing yourself. That's why self development is good. So if you're doing all those things, when it comes to showing up, you have quiet confidence that you'll be fine. You'll be fine if you're thrown into the deep end and you put the spotlight is put on you. So that's one surprising benefit. The other benefit is that you develop inner peace because you're not trying to be who you are not. You know, they say the wicked run when nobody is chasing them. So sleeping with one eye open when you've done something to people, or when you said something about people that you shouldn't say. But the more authentic you are, the less you're trying to be who you are not. And so you're not afraid and thinking, oh, they'll soon find out who I am. They'll soon find out who I am. And if they find out it to be an issue, that's not going to be how you will operate. So inner peace is one. And the last one is accepting your limitations can help you create the right boundaries. You know, if you know that I have a limit, I can't do this. So, and or I can't do this yet. So if it is an essential part of what you need to be doing, saying I can't do this yet, accepting your limitations is a way to kind of say, yeah, I'm working on it, but I can't do it yet, and it's okay. And it just helps you create boundaries. It helps you set the expectations of other people, and you're being realistic about what you can deliver and what you cannot. It's really very useful for your mental health. So, all in all, I believe that this year for me, my keyword is being unapologetic and living in an unapologetic way. Last year it was live well. It was hashtag live well, and it was more of looking at my essence. So last year I talked a lot about looking at my essence, and really that was what's my brilliance, what people experience when they're around me. And once I nailed that a lot more, this year I'm more focused on how to be unapologetic and accepting of who I am. So you want your motto in life when you're authentic to be what you see is what you get. And that brings the peace, that helps you develop quiet confidence, and that helps you build the right boundaries. So that's what I've got to share with you today. I hope you found it useful. But as usual, here is a quote that kind of brings it all together. And it says, to be yourself in a world that is constantly trying to make you something else is the greatest accomplishment. Ralph Waldo Emerson. So to be yourself in a world that is trying to constantly make you something else is the greatest accomplishment. That to me summarizes what authenticity is about. And it requires careful consideration and introspection as an introvert to ask yourself, what are the benefits of being authentic and what are the challenges? And how can I begin to forge an authentic pathway towards holistic success for myself? Whether that's on social media, in my private life where nobody is seeing me, but I want to be thriving. And, amongst my friends and people who know me and my relationships, what are the benefits? What are the challenges? Being real about them and owning them. So thanks for watching and thanks for listening. And I'd love to hear your views on this topic of authenticity. Everybody has an opinion about it. What's your opinion? Have you struggled with being authentic? What are some of the ways that you have been able to navigate your authentic pathway? And how are you accepting the vulnerability and gaining wisdom? I want you to share your experiences with me in the comments. Feel free to connect with me. And if you want to dive deeper into this as an individual or an organization that wants to help your staff to find creating the right environment where authenticity and vulnerability works very well, because there'll be psychological safety and trust in those environments, why not get in touch with me? And I can come in and have and facilitate the right team dynamics training, the right conversations around the table. Feel free to get in touch. Feel free to share your comments. In the meantime, continue to appreciate your introvert strengths and say quietly, confidently introverted. God bless. Thank you you for tuning in to another episode of Quietly Confident Introverts. If you found today's discussion valuable, please subscribe, rate, review, and share the podcast with others. Your feedback fuels our mission to empower introverted women leaders. Remember, you can also connect with me, Patience Sukumbono, at The Visionary Introverted Woman, where we are dedicated to helping you discover your inner strength and lead with purpose. Stay true to your vision. Embrace your introverted superpowers, and let's make a lasting impact together. Until next time, stay confidently introverted.